cards that are said to predict the future, symbols that lay out global plans in front of us, and unseen forces that shape tomorrow step by step. At first, it sounds like wild and dark conspiracy stories, does it not? But what if the issue is not as simple as we assume? What if someone has already written the future, and we are merely puppets moving through a script while the strings are held by someone else? It is an unsettling idea, yes. Yet over the last 50 years, so many coincidences have accumulated that seem to echo both today and the critical events that could unfold over the next 50 years to a surprising degree that at some point you cannot help but ask, what if? Today we are going on a journey that may look like conspiracy when viewed one by one, but starts to reveal a larger picture when the pieces are placed side by side. From the dark claims surrounding Illuminati-themed card games to messages linked to the X-Files universe, and from symbols scattered through popular culture to certain magazine covers, we will talk about how events that seem unrelated can form a pattern. And unfortunately, the big picture suggested by these narratives is far from optimistic. Welcome to the Matt F. Curran podcast. Most of us have played card games or role-playing games. Sometimes you are an elf, sometimes a wizard. The goal is usually to defeat evil, rescue the princess, and set the world right. But in 1982, a game was released that was built on the opposite idea. In this game, the goal is not to be on the good side. It is to become the most ruthless and effective force, win, and then take your place at the top of what is called the New World Order. The name of this game is the Illuminati Card Game. In this universe, designed by Steve Jackson, you lead a secret organization. You try to rebuild the world under a dark order by taking control of key power centers such as the media, giant corporations, cults, and governments. When the game first came out, it was a set of roughly 100 cards. Later, in 1994, it was expanded into a larger and more comprehensive structure of 400 cards. Even though its creator said he wanted to mock conspiracy theories and reflect these claims through an absurd game language, some argue that there are striking similarities. For example, there are cards that immediately bring specific events to mind the moment you see them. One card titled Terrorist Attack is said to resemble the Twin Towers, and another card titled Pentagon is described as portraying the American Defense Headquarters in flames. It is emphasized that these cards went on sale about 7 years before the September 11th attacks in 2001. Of course, many people will say it is coincidence, and that is normal. We are only at the beginning, and it is claimed that the examples grow in number as the narrative goes deeper. Another card is known by the theme epidemic. Those who accept conspiracy narratives connect this card to the COVID-19 pandemic. They argue that many details, from a sanitizer bottle to medical associations and the bags in the background, point to the global crisis that began in 2020. I will mention a few examples that are said to be even more intriguing in a moment, so keep this in mind. As you keep examining the deck, you also encounter the claim that two cards suggest a very well-known figure of our time, decades before the events. One is said to contain an outburst similar to "enough," and the other carries a phrase like "charismatic leader." So who is the person on this 1994 depiction said to resemble? Many suggest that the first name most people think of is Donald Trump. Some even place the numerical and visual details on the card next to certain photographs of Trump taken years later and argue that the chance of coincidence becomes smaller. Pushed even further, it is claimed that the threatening line under the card casts a shadow toward an assassination attempt that would become a topic many years later. Is that logically possible or not? Let us keep going without rushing to a verdict. Another example often described as one of the most striking cards in the deck is Combined Disaster, meaning mass disasters. This card is described as showing people fleeing in panic after a major event, fires rising in the background, and a clock tower collapsing. The time is said to point to around 2:30. That detail may look ordinary to some, but those looking through a Japan-focused lens argue that it resembles the Wacko Clock Tower in Tokyo. They also claim that the time hints point to the year 2011 and the hour of the major earthquake and tsunami on that same day. Seen one by one, it is easy to say coincidence. But when the Twin Towers and Pentagon associations, the Trump comparisons, and the Tokyo Clock Tower claim are stacked on top of each other, the same question naturally returns. Are these merely interesting similarities, or fragments of a larger plan operating beyond our perception. People will, of course, say, a game company guessed, and it happened to match. But at this point, a commonly cited event enters the story: the FBI raid on Steve Jackson Games in 1990. According to the narrative, while the more comprehensive second series was being prepared, the company office was raided. The stated reason was an allegation that an employee had obtained certain emergency documents through illegal means. It is said that many devices were seized, including computers and storage units that contained the card designs. This incident is often described as a turning point that intensified the conspiracy narratives around the cards. Conspiracy commentators argue that the real reason was entirely different. They claim the game creators hacked the system, reached information about certain plans, and then embedded that information symbolically into the cards, and that the raid happened because of this. As years passed and more real-world events were compared to the cards, the mystery around the deck was said to grow. It is also often mentioned that the company owners sued because of the raid and won. Still, in the public imagination, the thought that something is off here began to take hold. Even so, it is healthier to continue without getting fully carried away. Similarities can truly be nothing more than coincidence. Yet some insist that the examples we are about to discuss are compelling enough to shake even those who lean toward the coincidence explanation. Now let us move away from the vague prophecies attributed to the Illuminati cards and turn to another source that is said to deliver clearer messages about the future: the covers of The Economist magazine, which some link to influential families known since the 19th century. At the end of each year, the magazine places expectations and major trends for the next year on its cover in a symbolic language. As time passes, some people revisit these covers and claim that they were shown what would happen in advance. For instance, the 2019 cover is frequently cited by those who read symbols. This cover, dedicated to the 500th anniversary of Leonardo da Vinci's death, is described as centering a modern interpretation of the Vitruvian Man, surrounded by many symbolic references. Those who analyze it argue that it hinted at numerous elements that would later define the COVID-19 era, even before the crisis began. The suggestion of lying through a growing nose, signs interpreted as harbingers of disaster, a square code on a phone, reminders of coded tracking during the pandemic, and associations built around animal figures. In this reading, the message is clear: a major global rupture is approaching. Supporters of the narrative say that not long after, the world's order was turned upside down. When it comes to interpretations of the 2025 cover, the cover is treated like a clock face. Based on symbols tied to different periods of the year, possibilities such as economic decline, weakening political figures, nuclear risk, currency shocks, and solar-related events are discussed. Time will show how much of it comes true, but these covers are often considered worth archiving and are repeatedly brought back into the spotlight. It is also said that hints about the future appear frequently in popular culture, if you know how to look. For example, the pilot episode of The Lone Gunman, described as a side project within the X-Files universe, aired in March 2001. In the episode, a group within the government is portrayed as remotely taking control of a passenger plane and planning to crash it into the World Trade Center in New York. The goal is to pin the blame on terrorists and create a foundation for a new war. The heroes stop the plane at the last moment and disaster is prevented. Yet only months later, the September 11th attacks occur in real life, and this similarity becomes one of the examples that fuels conspiracy narratives. In these narratives, it is argued that the blame was placed on Al-Qaeda and that the United States then gained a pretext for actions in the Middle East. Another claim area revolves around popular authors. Some conspiracy commentators argue that elites intervene in books, films, and works that reach huge audiences in order to steer mass psychology. One often cited example is the claim that a 1981 novel by Dean Koontz mentions a virus designed as a biological weapon and calls it Wuhan 400. Some say that earlier versions placed the origin elsewhere and that later editions emphasized Wuhan. Another example is the claim that a book attributed to Sylvia Browne in 2008 predicted that around 2020, an illness affecting the lungs and bronchi, resisting treatments, would spread across the world. These parallels can be explained as coincidence, but from the conspiracy perspective, it is considered more likely that those who hold control ask popular creators to insert symbolic details. After all of this, the most basic question is this: if such a force truly exists, why would it reveal itself by leaving traces? It could do everything in secret, so why expose itself through symbols? Within this narrative, the answer is said to be scientific and sociological, to guide people more easily. There is a concept that has circulated in conspiracy culture for a long time: predictive programming. According to this approach, governments or power structures that are claimed to sit above them prepare society mentally for events they plan to carry out in the future by presenting those events beforehand in fiction through films, series, books, and games. When the event happens, people experience less shock and become more inclined to accept it. In this view, popular culture turns into a propaganda tool, and repeated themes make people less sensitive to certain subjects. According to certain alternative media figures who are said to bring up this idea often, many channels from Hollywood to television plant future plans into our subconscious in subtle ways. As people are exposed to such content, familiarity grows, and when the event occurs, their reaction threshold drops, as they say. It was obvious. The rise of countless productions that revolve around war, terror, and epidemics before major traumatic events is seen in this view not as a coincidence, but as a conditioning process. This narrative often explains the process in three stages. First, a problem is created, a deliberate atmosphere of crisis, chaos, or fear, such as a terror attack, economic collapse, epidemic, or staged coup. Second, a reaction is produced. The public is pushed to respond with fear and anger and to demand action from authority. In some scenarios, the opposite is triggered intentionally as well. The public is pushed to react against authority because the goal can be reached from either direction. The final stage is the solution. The remedy that is claimed to have been planned from the beginning is introduced. Laws that restrict freedoms, a new war, a new financial order. The public sees it as rescue and even feels satisfied, believing their reaction produced results. Yet in this narrative, the public is the one that falls into the trap. This approach is most often illustrated with the period after September 11th. Conspiracy commentators argue that the massive wave of fear increased public support for external operations, and that laws introduced under the banner of security eroded individual freedoms. The message is this: if, after a major trauma, you hand excessive power to a single sinner and give up basic rights, another game may be unfolding behind the scenes. Another concept presented as a subconscious method is the idea of revealing the method itself. Referring to Michael Hoffman's work titled Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, it is argued that hidden powers show certain secrets to the public little by little over time. In this view, they hide at first, then gradually expose. People see the truth but do not act because repeated disclosures weaken their sense of surprise. And when plans are visible, yet the masses remain silent, the hidden rule grows stronger. Some interpret this as a ritual of escaping responsibility. By saying, "We told you beforehand, and you accepted," they believe they avoid moral or metaphysical accountability. At this point, some also draw a parallel with a theme found in certain religious texts: "I only called you, and you followed." In other words, the narrative claims that the masses, numbed as if sedated, do not object even when plans are displayed in front of them. Those who object are often silenced by the pressure of the crowd. This lack of response is said to be built across generations until a model of the unreactive person emerges. Even so, no matter how big the plan is, continuing to carry water against the fire is a virtue. Standing upright against a tyrant instead of bowing is a virtue. Speaking up rather than going silent in the face of injustice is a virtue. And fighting without surrender, even when conditions worsen, is a stance. Mysterious card games, productions filled with symbols, best-selling books that are claimed to hint at the future. As these crumbs come together, it becomes easier to look at the world through the lens of conspiracy commentators. The idea that nothing is a coincidence, nothing is as it seems, everything is connected settles into the mind. So are these parallels truly a gradual disclosure of a hidden script that governs the world? Or are they the inevitable product of a human mind searching for patterns in a chaotic world? Perhaps the truth sits somewhere between these extremes. Perhaps even if elites do not know the future with certainty, they still use cultural and symbolic tools to build the future they want, and those symbols turn into self-fulfilling prophecies over time. We took a strange journey from a seemingly simple card game to mass psychology. Now it is your turn. Are all of these only interesting coincidences, or small pieces of a large and dark puzzle? Share your thoughts in the comments. Next week, I will discuss how some of the topics we covered today can turn into a much bigger threat with the support of artificial intelligence. Stay tuned. Take care of yourself until we meet again next week.